In an earlier video, I talked about defining wealth. What is wealth to you? And now I want to go one step further and talk about poverty thinking versus abundance or wealth thinking. So an example of poverty thinking is those rich people are just jerks. The moment you say that, you have made a person who has wealth into a villain. So of course, your subconscious is never going to let you accumulate wealth because you've already said, hey, people who have wealth are jerks and you don't want to be a jerk. So you're going to sabotage yourself. Another example of poverty thinking is, I'll never be able to afford a home. So are these thoughts really helping you? And in my opinion, they're helping you stay where you are financially. And if you want to change where you are financially, a great place to start is with those views, with that type of thinking, with what you say. So one example of switching from poverty thinking to abundance thinking is, instead of thinking, those rich people, think instead, wow, I have everything I need in this moment, and there's such abundance around me. If you don't feel that's true for you, that's fine. I do believe that's true for a lot of people who think they're poor. I think they are, in fact, surrounded by abundance, and I think they do have everything they need. I'm sure there's exceptions. Another form of poverty thinking is something like, I'll never have a home. I'll never be able to afford a house. And this might be true for a lot of people. California is particularly expensive in the metropolis areas. So you might very well be within your rights to say that you cannot afford a home in certain areas. But one way you can replace this, and this is a subtle trick, this is pretty fun, is instead of thinking those thoughts, I'll never be able to afford a home, just imagine that you own a home. Just give yourself some time each day, 5 minutes, to visualize what that home looks like. And more importantly, how do you feel now that you own this home? You're not forcing yourself to own a home, something you may or may not be able to do, but you're giving yourself, what would I imagine that I would feel like if I owned the home? And by doing this subtle change, you're no longer robbing yourself of those feelings. Now you're allowing yourself to feel what you might feel if you owned a home. A lot of people are onto this and swear that this helps them, this visualization of what they want and how they might feel when they get it. Whether or not you get what you want starts to become less important. For example, I used to think, wow, I really want to own a home in Maui, Montana, and Southern California. Then when I bought a home and realized how much attention it took and how much of my life force it took just to manage the one home, I realized, well, I don't really know if I want those 3 homes anymore. And prior to buying my first home, I would imagine how would I feel when I had these homes, and that was wonderful. I experienced this wonderful life before I even owned a single home. And then when I owned one, it was very different from how I imagined, and so I changed my goals based on the reality. And in the meantime, I got to feel an amazing way. So I highly recommend replacing your poverty thinking, like I can never afford this, with giving yourself just even 5 minutes a day to visualize what your goal is, for example, owning a home, and how you might feel when you achieve that goal. You have everything to gain from this because you're giving yourself those feelings that you want without needing to hit some goal that may or may not be possible. And with this, I do want to put a warning here. Something a lot of people do when they start visualizing for themselves is they visualize things that might be out of their reach. For example, an extreme example is someone might imagine, I'm going to be the most popular rock star in the world. And maybe it's someone who isn't really doing anything to move towards that dream, other than visualize. And some people can end up depressed because they think, oh, why isn't this working? Why am I not the most popular rock star in the world? And they end up depressed because they're not achieving their goals. They're very oriented around the goal itself. And so if you are visualizing, I recommend focusing on the feelings, because that's where the gold is, to me, is how I feel. So you might instead imagine that you're the most popular rock star. How might you feel? And by doing that, you're putting in the present, in the now, you're creating this wonderful space for yourself. And it hopefully is taking you away from feeling like you have to become the world's best, most popular rock star. And instead, oh, let's just give that to myself in my imagination. So, just to reiterate, focusing on the goal itself sometimes can lead people down dark paths. So, I recommend focusing on once you achieve those goals in your imagination, how might you feel? And that affects you in the present moment. Then you're imagining having this goal achieved already, and you're imagining how you might feel, and those feelings are real. Those feelings are now. Don't hold your feelings hostage to achieving some goal. Instead, give yourself a taste of what those feelings might be like. And those feelings might not even be accurate. I felt very different as a homeowner than I did imagining myself a homeowner. I enjoy both feelings, but they're vastly different. I certainly benefited from imagining I achieved those goals. Ah. Hello. Hello. A very good book that has stood the test of time on this topic, and there's tons of books on this topic. Think and Grow Rich, I believe it's by Napoleon Hill, is a book written ages ago, many, many decades ago, and it's just about how ideas and how your thoughts affect your reality. So I highly recommend figuring out how to have wealthier thoughts, or thoughts of how wealthy am I, versus having thoughts about how you don't have enough. You have nothing to lose, right? If having thoughts of wealth creates more wealth and abundance in your life, you win. So to me, it's win-win. And even if it doesn't create more wealth and abundance in your life, at least you're starting to see how much wealth you actually have rather than what you don't have. So I think I've said all I need to, and I just can't emphasize enough about how your thoughts, so poverty thinking, you're thinking about poverty or how little you have, are so important to interrupt. And I recommend tweaking those thoughts to being what you want. So instead of thinking about what you don't have, try to imagine what you want. And that should be a great starting point. If you have some wealth thoughts in your world that you'd like to share in the comments, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you.